I used to do a lot of work in the US as a freelance illustrator, and the amount of times I used to get told saying, "Wow, your Puerto Rican accent's so weird." No, it's okay.
Welcome to another DragonLance Saga creator episode. My name is Adam, and today I'm talking with Dragonlance-inspired artist Juan Moore. You can check out his fantastic work on his YouTube channel, Odd Artworks. There'll be a link in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, ring the bell, and you can further help this channel and pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate link in the description below. Juan, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm all good, thank you. Yeah, just enjoying the nice weather, even though nobody can go outside really at the moment. But yeah, it's all good.
I'm in the United States here. You're located in UK, right?
Kind of. If you ever look on a map, there's a little tiny island in between England and Ireland, and that's where I'm based, in the Isle of Man.
Nice.
People on the Isle of Man get really, really angry if you say that you're from the UK.
Oh, really?
We're like a crown dependency, which is kind of independent, but kind of not. And yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. So my name, even though it looks, like it should be Juan, is Juan because it's a Manx name rather than a Spanish name.
Oh, you learn something new every day. I had no idea.
Weird place, the Isle of Man. Our cats have no tails. There you go. That's probably the weirdest thing about it.
Really?
Yeah. You never heard of a Manx cat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I never thought about that though. That's wow. Well, I wanted to have you on. I was first exposed to your work. I saw it was posted on like a Reddit page or something like that, I think, about this draconian that you had redesigned. And I followed this sort of rabbit hole Alice in Wonderland trip to your YouTube channel and just sort of got sucked into what you do. And my background is graphic design. I'm an art director at an agency. And so I always really, truly appreciate fine art and fine artists. And to see one that has a bit of a fantasy twist like you is just amazing. And the draconian that you put together was fantastic. We're going to show the time-lapse video clip, a little snippet of the video here in just a minute. But I wanted to dive in first, a little bit of background about you. When did you realize that this was the path you wanted to go down professionally with art?
Oh God, probably always. I've just always drawn. Weirdly, when I was a kid, me and my mates, we used to always just draw, the skeleton army from Jason and the Argonauts.
Yes.
We used to always draw the skeleton army fighting Nazis for some reason. I can't really remember why. It was just really strange, but it just came to me now. But that's when I sort of realized, yeah, fantasy's great. You can have all this weird stuff that happens. And I think that's just, being a kid in the early 80s, that was what was around. Right. But yeah, at high school, I was not very academic at high school, but I was all right at drawing and painting. But because I wasn't very academic, I was encouraged to leave school at the earliest opportunity, which here in the Isle of Man, the UK, you get the option to leave school at 16, which is probably quite early for US standards, I would have thought. So I left school at 16. And I got like 1,000 really, really, really bad jobs. And I got to a point where I thought, you know what, I'm tired of doing jobs like this. I'm going to see what I can do. Yeah. And I enrolled in our local kind of college, which would be like what you have community colleges over there. So that would be our equivalent. And I did a 2-year course there. And then I went to university and studied illustration and got very, very lucky when I was in my final year. And I got some quite big commissions. I did some stuff for Penguin Books.
Oh, that's great.
Weirdly, in the US, even though I did my degree in Cornwall in the UK, which is quite strange. And from that, I started getting regular work with newspapers, national newspapers. I worked for The Guardian for years. But I weirdly, all through my art education, every time I went slightly near fantasy, everybody was like, no, you never make any money doing that. Forget it. And I did for a long time.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
wild. So can I ask you, just from the publishing and advertising side of it, do you see a decline in original illustration work in that
Well,
industry?
it's quite strange. Part of the reason I started the YouTube channel was because pretty much, probably for the last 5 years or so, all my illustration work has been digital
Huh.
in the way that I create it.
Right.
So some of the things you would have seen on my website, they're created digitally. But I come from because like yourself, I'm getting on a bit. I'm in my 40s now. It's
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Um, I come from a traditional art background, so I like to paint, I like to draw. Even my
Mhm.
digital stuff starts off as a drawing, but I really miss the tactile nature of paint and how it can go wrong at any moment. And even if it does go wrong and you fix it, that mistake starts to become a part of the artwork. And
Right.
you don't really get that with digital, or I don't think, well, certainly the way I do it, you don't get it with digital artwork. You can just, Command Z your mistake and
Right.
it's gone.
It can also
So
look
I
really
really want to
too
do that.
refined, right? Like part of the charm of original illustrations, traditional painting, is that you see strokes of the brush, and
Yeah,
you see
yeah, definitely.
paint being pushed around.
And certainly when I first started as an illustrator, it was really good. It's going to make me sound awful now, but it was a really good side hustle. So if I did a piece for like the Guardian newspaper, I could take it to the local art gallery and have the art a cutout of the article with it, with the framed artwork, and it was so easy to sell. So I'd be
Wow,
getting paid twice for the same job. It was fantastic.
that's great. I'd never
You
even
can't really
considered
do
that.
that with digital artwork though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have seen a decline in illustration in general, particularly in the fields I've worked in which is largely editorial
Mhm.
and publishing a little bit. There's definitely been I don't know. The way work's commissioned now is quite different. It used to be if you were going to work for a publisher, they'd want to meet you. You'd go for lunch or something. It'd be a real kind of get together thing. But now the amount, I would say, probably in the last 10 years, I think the majority of clients I've met, I've never even spoken to. It's all done over email. It's quite
Oh
cold now,
wow.
actually.
Yeah.
Not sure I like it.
And that's not just because of the pandemic. That's just the trend,
Well,
right?
that's just the way it's going, and
Right.
I can imagine the pandemic just speeding all that up a little bit. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever going to go back. Though on the plus side, the pandemic has created a few more freelance opportunities since they're realizing in-house doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So
That's
that's kind of
great.
good.
That's fascinating. I always wondered about that because in my industry it's almost all stock photography, or if you can get the client to okay a budget for a photographer and set everything up yourself, it ends up being time and cost prohibitive for most what people expect nowadays. It's I don't know. It's
Absolutely, yeah,
especially with
yeah.
the advent of like self-publishing and the prevalence of neophyte Photoshop users. They feel like they can just do everything themselves, So
Oh, absolutely.
there's a lot
I
of
mean,
it's
as
good enough.
yourself as a graphic designer, geez, the amount of bad graphic design and Photoshop I see out there is just, almost makes me not want to look at stuff because it hurts my eyes so much sometimes. But
Well,
weirdly,
yeah,
that kind of downturn in the freelance work is what led me back to fantasy stuff,
oh, that's
which is
great.
really, it's really, I have to tell you this because it is really random.
Mhm.
So I was sort of in a weird space because I lecture illustration at a college part time, and I work part time as a freelancer and have done for the last sort of 7 or 8 years.
Mhm.
Um, and I was sort of in this weird place where I wasn't getting as much freelance work as I used to, and I wasn't at that particular time. I wasn't enjoying teaching too much. I was sort of thinking about what else to do, and then another really random thing about the Isle of Man is the Isle of Man used to have a really big film industry. They used to film a lot of films over here
Oh yeah.
because it kind of looks like it's weird. It's not. It is kind of an old-fashioned place, so it kind of looks like the 1940s most of the time over here. But
That's
also we have a lot
great.
of kind of hills and forests and things, so it can look like kind of medieval places as well. So,
Hmm.
and because the other weird thing that they don't like to talk about is we are a tax haven.
Hmm.
Like tax over here is like 10% or something like
Oh
that,
wow.
which is which is really good. So they used to make a lot of films over here because it was really cheap to make. So there's a lot of people, and you know, I think just about every man and his dog over here has done something in the film industry, and I'd worked in animation and stuff like that over here. But quite randomly, a lovely lady I used to work with, who is a prop master, moved to the US years and years ago, and she phoned me up because she was working on True Detective.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you saw that show.
Yeah.
Well, the third season of that show has a D&D focused plot.
What?
I know, it's crazy. So what happened was, it's sort of set. A part of it is set in the early '80s, and it's during sort of this, or sort of during the Satanic Panic thing.
Yeah.
And the idea is that this serial killer who you never actually see lures these kids into the forest through showing them a D&D book, right? And you know, the prop master phoned me up and said, you know, you do weird stuff, because I do. You know, the stuff I do for The Guardian is always either relationships, psychology, or just weird stuff that they think about. And she said, you ever played Dungeons and Dragons? And I went, yes, I used to play that tons when I was a teenager. And they went, oh, can you do a classic book cover? And they showed me some of the examples they want. I think it was the Manual of the Planes and the Monster Manual 2 they had for reference, because they had a very specific title for this book. So I did this artwork for that. Couldn't tell anyone about it for a year. Gave them another artwork because they wanted a stack of books. And then it was on that TV show. It was just so random.
That's awesome, though.
And that kind of made me realize, man, I love doing fantasy artwork. I want to do a lot more of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it something because obviously, you know, it's completely dependent on the gaming industry, whether or not, or even the video gaming industry, whether or not there's going to be new materials being constantly, you know, repeatedly put out. So is it something that you've looked into, you know, looking at different role-playing game and video game developers, you know, for concept art or anything like that? Or are you pretty...
Yeah, I would say I am definitely heavily inspired by a few illustrators from my youth. Tony DiTerlizzi, definitely one of them. I absolutely love his stuff. And I was always disappointed he never did anything for Dragonlance.
Yeah.
Because I'd love to see his interpretation of Kender and things like that. It'd be really, really great. Because the stuff he did on Planescape was just beautiful. And I know it's not a D&D game, but the stuff he did for Changeling, I don't know if you ever saw any of that.
Oh, I don't think I have.
For my money, the best designed book in terms of artwork, layout, everything, from a graphic design and illustration point of view, the best designed RPG book is the second edition Changeling, The Dreaming rulebook. It's beautiful to behold.
Wait a second.
Chance. You ever see one?
I have. That's the World of Darkness, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I used to do a little bit of vampire and I did a little bit of werewolf. And my friends, they picked up the Changeling and they were using that. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to go back and look. Those were some.
Yeah, it's a tough game to play, but it's a beautiful book. It is a really beautiful book. Dave McKean was a big influence, though he's sort of more, you know, more comic book type stuff, I think. Yeah. But yeah, you know, off the back of the True Detective stuff, I started to do work for like Kickstarter games and stuff like that.
Right.
So I'll be honest with you, I've never actually approached any big publishers yet. I'm going to, I think.
It's in the mail.
But yeah, it's just sort of weird little jobs keep kind of dropping by, which is really nice. It's always nice when that happens.
Yeah, you never know what is going to cause someone's inspiration to discover, you know, you as an artist. And I always, just in my industry, it's really nice. You know, you do a bit of networking and then someone just off the top of their head thinks, oh, what about that one guy that I talked to that one time? And then you can get a freelance gig from that. I mean, that's just really how it works. You gotta engage with the people in the industry.
Yeah. I think the first, you know, even in publishing and editorial, the first sort of 5 or 6 jobs I did when I was starting out was because definitely the first job, I was sat in an art director's office with my portfolio, and this guy was sort of leafing through my portfolio. Like, I don't think people do it anymore, but they certainly did back then. Just leafing through, he wasn't really paying much attention, and he was on the phone to somebody, and I think he might have even rested his coffee on my portfolio. And I remember just thinking, because I was in New York, because part of my final year of my degree, we had to go to New York, and basically book appointments with art directors to try and get work, and 10% of my degree mark was based on whether or not we got any work.
Yeah.
So it was really useful in that regard. I remember being sat there and all I was thinking was like, man, it's the middle of May. I have just stomped from one end of Manhattan Island to the other. I'm tired, I'm sweaty, and this guy is resting his coffee on my portfolio. I can't believe this. Anyway, he put the phone down and he went, yeah, do you fancy doing 12 book covers?
Oh, geez.
The other person on the phone was literally an illustrator telling them they couldn't take the job anymore.
Oh, man.
So right place, right time. And then when I started in editorial, it was literally the same thing. You know, illustrators had said, yeah, deadline's too tight, can't do it. And, you know, them just phoning me up and sort of saying, you know, I've got your copy sheet in front of me. Do you want to have a crack at this? Your deadline is like 6 o'clock this evening.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, editorial's quick work, which is kind of why I like it. But yeah, you know, definitely right place, right time. And then building that relationship up, you know, making sure, you know, just don't be a dick, basically. That's it. And deliver on time. That's really all it takes.
I think that's a good life lesson, just in general. Yeah. Don't be a dick.
Definitely.
It's always
just do what you say you're going to do and don't be a dick about it.
Yeah. Let's talk a little. I just switched over to showcase some of your work. Now, this is some from your website, juanillustration.com, and that link will be in the description below as well. But also, we've got a little bit of the snippet of the video that I want to get to here in just a second. Just sort of teasing it up for people. Again, most people, if you're watching anything on this channel, you should be, looking at random Dragonlance reference videos across the internet anyway. So you've probably already run across the video that we're going to be showing a little snippet of, because again, fantastic work. I mean, just looking at some of these images as they're scrolling by, and this is a mix of media between digital and traditional painting and stuff. What inspired you to create your channel, Odd Artworks?
Oh, that is a good question. And it's a well, is it a I don't think it is that complicated. Originally, it started out because I was getting hassled by a couple of galleries that I've shown with over the years to do an exhibition. And I'll be really honest, I just don't feel like now is a good time to do an exhibition that you're trying to make money out of and sell.
Right.
And I thought, oh man, how do I actually show work to people? Because apparently people were asking about it. And I thought, I'll just do a few YouTube videos, and that, the first few on the channel are just me just going about how I would do an editorial illustration, which is normally, an article about somebody's relationship going south, or a really random article about sleep hygiene, so you have a good night's sleep, so you'd have to provide an illustration for it. And then it kind of got to a point where it's like, yeah, this is starting to feel too much like, what I do all the time, and sort of filming it was a bit of a hassle, particularly if I had a deadline on or something like that. And then I thought, quite randomly, I was thumbing through the monster manual for D&D, and I absolutely hate, with a fiery passion, the way 5th edition goblins look.
Oh, really?
They look so angry and so aggressive. They don't look puckish. They don't look mischievous. And I thought, oh, come on, I could do a better job than that. And then I thought, oh, do you know what? I will. So I filmed it, and I did that, and it got a bit of traction. And I thought, oh, I'll do a few more of these, and that's where I'm at the moment. And there was a couple of videos, like, I am a huge Dragonlance fan, but, because most of my friends have never read Dragonlance, I never get to talk about it. Yeah. So I think that was me just all that Dragonlance stuff bottled. I was like, right, I'm going to do something Dragonlance.
I'm going to do it. I'm going in.
Yeah. So I did a Draconian, and I love Draconians. And I did have, it's a typical thing, isn't it? Anything you put on the internet, there's always somebody who's not going to like it. And I accept that. That's fine. But I did have a couple of arguments with people saying, oh, it's just a Draconian. It's just a Dragonborn. And I went, no, it's not. They're very different. Come on. I'm not going to be a nerd about it, but they're different.
Pushing your glasses up. All right.
The Draconian, I think, was definitely an inspiration for the Dragonborn, but they're so different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the fact of, this is going to be me pushing up my glasses, just the way they die. and how each type
Exactly,
dies
yeah.
completely differently, has different type of breath, or if they have breath at all. I mean, the whole mechanics, it's a little reductive to just dive into the, a little trite. It's just a dragonborn. No, that's a little
Yeah, well,
different.
that whole creation thing, the good dragon eggs that got corrupted, and
Yeah,
it's
great.
so interesting. And it's like, oh, come on, man, just read some Dragonlance.
You feel better about your life, I promise you.
Yes. Oh, man, they should put that on the book. You'll
Yeah.
feel better about your life if you read this.
It always amazes me because, just throughout my entire life, I've always had some sort of reference to Dragonlance, whether it's a book on my shelf or, just sort of talking with someone and I see a tattoo or something. And so I run across more people who have just happened to, read one single novel or seen a book cover, and that's the entirety of all their knowledge, but they do remember it. They do know it. There's something about Dragonlance that captures your imagination and just sort of fuses this moment in time in your life where you recognize it, and then you just always reflect on that whenever someone else brings it up later on. It's something special about that. I don't know.
Absolutely. And, you lot in the US, you were really lucky because you had those lovely Larry Elmore covers, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're ever curious, look at what the UK Penguin book covers look like, and you'll read it. You'll say Dragons of Autumn Twilight. For a start, the book is kind of a cold blue, which does not make me think of autumn. And on the cover, it's that illustration. I think it's Lorana fighting a draconian, in kind of a war scene. There's like a floating citadel in the background. It has nothing to do with the actual book.
Right, I'm looking at it right now.
Tonight had it was predominantly red, and it had that. It was the boat on the in the maelstrom with the King Priest's temple in the middle.
Yeah,
They're terrible. Great artworks, beautiful artworks, but just did not fit what those books were. And I often wondered, it's like, whoever commissioned this, did they even read this before they put that on the cover?
They're probably just thinking, we just need to get a piece of art, a piece of fantasy art. Somebody just throw it on the cover.
I think that's, having, should I say this? Having done a little bit of work with Penguin in the past, I'm sure they're very different now. I would say that was probably a mentality for a while, definitely.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Especially
at the same time, I suppose you've got to think about it like, there was such a boom in fantasy books in the mid 80s, right the way through to probably the early 90s, wasn't there?
Yeah, for sure.
So just slap them out, I bet was their mentality.
Yeah, I could see that. And, as far as the artists who are commissioned to create covers specifically, they're not always given, the book to read beforehand. They're given a brief synopsis.
That is true. I obviously when I was 16 and I read that book, and I thought, wow, yeah, this has nothing to do with this. And now I'm much, much older.
Yeah.
And I've worked in publishing and I've done book covers, and it's really interesting. So some book covers you get given quite a lot of information to work from. Mm-hmm. One book cover I did, which was for a book called Idle Green, which was not a great book because I did read it. It was a young adult book, but I'd done it off the back of doing another job, and the art director said, "Hey, are you free to do this other job?" And I went, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, just send me the synopsis," because normally you'd get you'd either get the synopsis with editor's notes all over it, or in my experience anyway. If it's not a well-known book like Shakespeare books or something, that's a bit different. But if it's a new book, you'd get like kind of a really detailed synopsis, editor's notes, and then you'd normally get a couple of paragraphs of what the art director is thinking about. Mm-hmm. This book, I said to the art director, "All right, do you want to send me over the stuff?" And he goes, "Yeah, I haven't actually got anything, but it's on an island. I think there's a comet and there's butterflies and an old man in it." That was all the information I had. And I did this book cover, and it all got signed off and approved. And, about 6 months later, the book was out. And I picked up this book, and I remember sat in my flat, and I read it. And I went, wow, my book cover has nothing to do with that book.
You're part of the problem, man.
Yeah, I am. I became part of the problem.
No, that's funny. But, that's just how it works sometimes. But honestly, you would hope that there would be, some editor or some creative director somewhere in the process line that's like, maybe we should have it represent the contents of the book.
What I could never figure out with those Dragonlance books was, I mean, there must be some kind of copyright issue or something. Why they never took just the Elmore covers that were created specifically for them and just print them in the UK? I just never got it. It just was really strange to me that.
It's interesting. And I do feel really privileged to have seen those different covers and how every reprinting, every massive reprinting anyway, how they sort of changed the photos out to newer versions. And the current ones with Matt Stawicki, I'm going to butcher that, sorry.
That's right, yeah.
But they're good, and he's incredibly talented. But there's something about that Elmore cover.
There's some. I mean, I love Elmore's work. I'm actually looking at the Dragonlance print that's signed on my wall at the moment. It's probably my most prized possession. Which is a bit depressing, maybe, but yeah, I love it. It's that one with Tanis in front and Tika and Lorana and Tasselhoff off to one side and Kitiara in the background. Absolutely love that artwork.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I think that's the artwork I first saw. I probably must have been. It was definitely before I'd read Dragonlance when I saw that artwork, and I thought, "Wow, man, that is something else."
Yeah. So, what was your first exposure to Dragonlance? Like, what was it? The image?
My first exposure to Dragonlance. So, my mum bought me the first Dragonlance novel because I think she thought it was like a D&D book because we used to play that at school as like an after-school club.
Yeah.
When I was about 11 or 12 or something like that. And I was really into it. And I was all through my teen years. And what happened was we started to play more and more D&D. And one of my friends bought the Tales of the Lance box set.
Yeah.
Which I had no idea was even connected to this particular novel that was sitting under my bed for years. But absolutely loved the artwork. And I think it was the first D&D, or it was AD&D, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first sort of game accessory we got that came with pre-made characters.
Yep.
Which obviously had the heroes of the Lance, the companions in it.
Oh, yeah.
Not a clue about any of it. And I think the first game I played Tasselhoff because...
Nice.
I mean, I'll be honest, I think Tass is one of my favorite characters. And because I had no idea what a Kender was, I played him like a hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as we got a bit older, I read Dragonlance and I told my friends who I played D&D with, I said, look, man, you got to read these books. And we all read them and we all got reasonably into Dragonlance. So probably about 16 is when I would say I properly got into it. But I was aware of it for a long time before I actually got into it.
Right.
And I remember I also read the books in a weird order because I came to it in sort of the mid-90s. I read the Chronicles, and I thought, wow, that was really good. What's the next book? And then Dragons of Summer Flame had just come out, and they said it's the fourth volume in the Chronicles series. And I was like, what?
That's a huge gap between what happened at the end of the War of the Lands. Like, wait a second, what's Raceland doing? What is this?
Like, why they called that the fourth Chronicles book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It should have just been a start of something brand new rather than trying to tie it in.
I often wonder that. They set a lot of things up in that book. And I often wonder whether it was going to be a trilogy or a couple of books because it all gets wrapped up rather quickly at the end.
Yeah, well, there was... TSR had hired them. Actually, I think maybe it was Wizard of the Coast at the time. They had rehired Weiss and Hickman in order to do a new trilogy to sort of bring back the brand, as it were, for third edition. And they ended up shutting down the trilogy into one novel, and it really kind of pissed off Weiss and Hickman because they had already, sort of outlined everything and had it all planned. So they're like, well, shit, what do we do now? Got to condense it all. But yeah, I mean, ultimately now it's back in their hands and they're releasing new books this year, which is going to be really, really exciting. I think.
I am so excited for that.
Yeah.
And so curious to what it's going to be. The tantalizing press release they've sort of put out there about it makes
crazy. Especially going back to the original time of the Chronicles during the War of the Lands with familiar characters, but there's a new bad guy or something. What is this going to be like a
new protagonist as well? I believe.
Yeah.
But do you know what I'm really hoping, because I think one of the uniquest things in Dragonlance. Mm-hmm. If you think of Dragonlance as kind of like a heroic epic fantasy type thing, I think the most unique thing in it is time travel.
Yep.
And
For
I
sure.
love the way it's done in Dragonlance. It's so good, and I'm really hoping that's going to be a big part of it.
Well, with Taz, I mean, you never, with him and the
That's
damn
it.
time travel device, you never know where he's going to pop up and when he's going to
Yeah,
pop up.
that's it. That's it. That's what's great about it. That's why
Yeah.
he's such a great character as well, and he's just
Oh,
you know
man.
um
Yeah, some of
yeah.
the saddest parts of the whole Dragonlance world involve him. Like,
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
it's
It
brutal.
was it was weird. I remember reading the books. I can always remember the first time I read the books. Sturm used to annoy the living piss out of
Oh,
me.
really?
Yeah, particularly in the first book because he was like that typical blooming lawful good character
Yep.
and that's what I loved about that first novel. It was so like just off the table, wasn't it?
Hmm.
It was like an actual a D&D game in novel form, and I thought that was really really cool. But then I also thought, well, if people have read this and they don't play D&D, they're not going to get that, aren't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, Sturm really annoyed me in those definitely in that first book. He grew on me a little bit in the second, but um, I wasn't that affected by his big sacrifice, his big death.
Oh,
But when
really?
Flint and
Oh,
Tasselhoff's reaction to it,
yeah.
oh my god, I was in tears reading that.
It's devastating.
Oh, it's horrible.
I'm going to,
But it's yeah. Over this whole lockdown thing, I've reread most of the Dragonlance books. I'm almost towards the end of the second War of Souls book at the minute.
oh, nice.
And it's weird because when I think back to how much Sturm annoyed me, I actually relate quite a lot to him now. It just goes to show how much he changes somebody, isn't it? And it's like, oh man, he's always doing the right thing. He just gets on my nerves, and now I'm like, oh, good on you, Sturm.
Well, that's
Well done.
one thing that I really appreciate about the Dragonlance world is that it's as hollow or as complex as you bring your own sensibilities to the table. Like if you really want to get into socio-political issues, it's there, like underneath
Oh
the
yeah,
surface. You talk about the Seekers, and that whole movement with the socio-political machinations of the Dragon Army over in Naraka and spreading out to all the different areas of Anslon. It gets really, really as detailed as you want. As a kid, I never thought of anything about the sort of minutia of racism that is inherent between these different races and how the elves are like the most racist of anyone, it seems like. And, I never really thought about anything like that. And then the older I get, the more I revisit it, the more I'm just like, wow, this is actually... I see online a lot people saying that Dragonlance is oversimplified fantasy because it has
I see
strong
that
good
too.
and
It really,
evil and
really
stuff.
winds me up that.
Yeah, it doesn't. It again, it's what you bring to it, I think, that really defines it. So if you're not going to look on it, it's not George R. R. Martin, but there's stuff there.
Well, it's kind of like, I mean, I always remember, back in the day when I talked to people about it who were really into fantasy, and they were like, oh yeah, it's just a watered down Lord of the Rings. And yeah, I suppose there are some similarities. The basic, plot, find X to defeat
Right.
person Y is there. But I don't know, Dragonlance was kind of, I've always thought of the analogy. If you think of the Lord of the Rings as like classical music,
Right.
it's epic, it's got everything in it. Dragonlance is like heavy metal rock opera.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's got everything, but it's dialed up to 11.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, it just hits you. Like, I think Tanis, even though I've read a lot of books since then, Tanis is still one of the most probably interesting characters I've ever sort of connected with. I mean, he is so interesting, and he's always conflicted. He lacks confidence in everything he does because you're seeing things from his point of view quite often. You sort of hear how he gets wound up by people, and the whole kind of love triangle thing. It was really well done. It was, and on paper, Dragonlance just should not work. There are way too many characters in those books.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Way too many,
Yeah.
but it works. It works.
Yeah, especially when they start splitting up and
I
you're
think
like
they
going
have
back and
to.
forth. It's like, oh my gosh, how do you game?
That's it.
How, like just the mechanics of a game session trying to do that as a DM is a pain in the butt.
I can remember. I think the first time I read Dragons of Winter Night, and they're all in that's the city that's not by the sea. Tarsus is that?
Right.
Yeah. And you just the volume of characters in those first few chapters, you're like, oh my god, I can't keep track of this. And I was so relieved when they split up,
Yeah.
just so I could keep track of who's who and where they are. And
Yeah.
but it's interesting. I would like to see. I obviously there were so many kind of spin-off novels and things like that by other authors, weren't there?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I did not read too many of those, but I would have liked to have seen what would have happened, what more of what went on in that kind of period between, the end of the Legends trilogy and the second generation stuff. Because it's like a 20 odd year period. I know there's little bits of here and there, but I do feel like Weiss and Hickman maybe dropped off some of the more interesting characters. I think. I mean, I would have loved to have seen more on Lorana.
Yeah.
Because you essentially she's a big part of the original trilogy, and then you don't hear too much of her. I mean, she's got a little snippet here and there, but you don't hear much about her until the War of Souls.
Yeah, that's right.
And she was
I never thought about that.
Yeah. And I mean, I enjoyed the Legends. I loved the focus on Caraman and Raistlin and their really messed up relationship, and Raistlin's just mad dash to become a god, and Caraman just
so
trying
awesome.
to quit booze.
Yeah, he loved his girl, and he loved to drink, and he was a very simple man. But I really kind of appreciated that, because you need to offset the complexity of Raistlin,
Oh God, yeah.
And you need someone looking after him, to be fair. I mean,
yeah. Well, it goes back to that game thing, doesn't it?
Yep.
I mean, what did a wizard used to have 4 hit points?
Yeah. No, until you were like, up in your double digits of levels, you were squishy as hell as a wizard.
Yeah.
Let me switch over to this video of the painting. I want to talk a little bit about this process before we dive deep into Dragonlance again here. I am a huge nut when it comes to process. That's what I focus on whenever I come up with new work for any client. It's the process that makes the work good in the end. And if you somehow cheat steps in the process, for me, it ends up showing in the final piece. And being able to watch your process from sketch to final painting is fascinating. I don't know, what inspired you to show the entirety of the process like this?
So, like I might have said before, I'm a lecturer at a college, and I teach illustration amongst. God, I feel like I teach everything sometimes. Visual communication is the name of the degree I teach on. Nice. But I end up having to teach animation, digital artwork, painting, life drawing, everything. It's crazy. But I always find that students see it as like magic. It's like a mystery to them. So if you can demystify the process, a lot of the decisions towards the end make sense. Now, I will say what's kind of weird about the way I do these is that if this was an illustration commission, I would probably do this over several sessions, but I do all these paintings in one session. So I don't go into as much detail as I possibly would. Also, they're not very big. I don't know if you can see my picture on the screen, but they're only like a little bigger than my hand, really.
That still looks pretty big to me. I mean, to be fair, if
I was doing it for realsy, I'd do it a lot bigger.
Yeah, a massive canvas.
I paint on board. I paint on bits of old. Gosh, this is going to make me sound really professional now. I paint on bits of plywood.
Yeah,
I just paint white. Because it's cheap, basically.
Yeah.
I can get a whole bunch of plywood for next to nothing, and I just paint over the top of it. But yeah, so I painted all kind of one color to begin with to get my values. So I often find if you can solve those problems, even though you can't see any of that in the final painting. And a few people have said, oh, why'd you paint all those weird colors to begin with? And it's like, well, it's more for me than for anything else. So I can solve problems before I get to how it's going to look.
Yeah.
The other weird thing that is a bit strange is I'm colorblind. So I struggle with red and
no
green.
Way.
Yes way. So I kind of taught myself this weird painting technique that involves a lot of underpainting. So I used to get commissioned to do a lot of green artworks, which is a big problem for me. So I learned early on that if I paint something dark, like a black or a brown, and I paint yellow over the top, it looks green.
That's amazing.
So the way I work is I work with temperature. So you probably hear me in videos quite a lot saying I want a warm feeling to it. So I do generally believe that, and I think that's what I took away from Elmore's work, is that they are very warm in palette, and they kind of invite you in a way.
Right.
So when I do those backgrounds, so even though it's a flat background, or it's flat-ish, because I'm quite a scruffy painter, but I paint it all like bright pink or bright yellow, and when I put that kind of bluish color over the top, you can see little tiny bits of that pink kind of coming through, which keeps it quite warm. And I knew, because the Draconian's armor was going to be quite cold in the blues and the blacks, I wanted a little bit of warmth in that background so it wouldn't look so cold.
Right.
To go. So that's why I do that. And I just build it up in layers. So that first thing I put down is a really watered down acrylic wash. And after that's dry, I go in with sort of heavier body acrylics and sort of fill it in. But man, I don't mind telling you, those wings were such a pain in the ass.
Oh, really? They look great.
I really wish I hadn't done those wings, because they took ages.
Well,
I mean, normally my painting session is about 3 hours, and that's normally when I start to lose patience and attention and things like that. So normally I get to that point of like, right, I'm not going to look at this for a day, and then I could do another session on it. But this one I think was 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
So it was a little longer than I normally spend. But I did enjoy it. I just wish I'd done his wings folded up.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it definitely works. Just
thanks.
looking at it, it's fantastic. What I really also appreciate, not only seeing the process, but you have this really nice voiceover on top of the speeded up video of you actually painting this piece. And you don't just talk about the process, you also, just sort of talk about what's on your mind and your thoughts as you're going. And it's very, very personable. It's very, it just draws you in, because you feel like you as an artist, not only the technical side of it because you're watching it, but you're also hearing a little bit of personality, and it's engaging to watch. I've watched a lot of stop motion artwork digitally, primarily because I don't see a lot of, people with setups that they can, pull stuff like this off very well. But it's cold, they're just talking about, the technical aspects of it. You don't really get a sense of the person. That's why on your channel specifically, I really appreciate some of the other videos that you have where it's, you talking like a vlog or something, but you're also, showing a sketch or some drawings and stuff as you're talking. It engages more as a viewer than, just a talking head would. And you get to see some really great artwork.
I think, yeah, I mean, I know quite a lot of artists and illustrators and people like that. And, the ones that I get along with, and I do try and get along with most people,
Right.
but a lot of artists, it's like, I suppose it's a confidence thing. They either come off as kind of a bit up their own arse. And I don't think they ever intend it, but I know I've certainly been guilty of it over the years. And it's a confidence thing. You either end up so far up your ass because you're so defensive about what you do and how you do it.
Right.
Or I used to get very nervous. You come across really blasé about things. And I feel like I'm quite conscious about trying to get a balance of where I want people to be aware that it's okay to paint. And I screwed up so many times.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like what I was talking about before in that's why I like painting, that if you accept that you can make mistakes and just paint over. That's why I like acrylic paint on oils and things like that. Oil, you just wipe it off the canvas and you're done. Acrylic, I mean, those wings you saw there, I just changed my mind and just painted over the top of it. I mean, I make mistakes left, right, and center.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the first one of these, which was the weird fish man painting I did on the channel, I'd never really recorded my artwork before. And when I was looking back, I ended up talking to myself, saying, oh man, I wish I'd done that differently. Maybe I'd spent more time on that. And weirdly, a friend of mine was in my flat at the time and said, oh man, you should say that on your video. And he makes kind of guitar tutorial videos, so it made sense. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll just talk about it. And yeah, I am painting essentially a really nerdy thing, and that I'm quite passionate about. So I think it's quite nice to I think a lot of people these days, they're quite nervous of showing excitement about things.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I definitely see that with students that I teach. You know, I on average, we can end up with students with us for 5 years.
Oh,
But on
wow.
average, it's about 3 years. So you build up a rapport, and when you first meet them, they're so not wanting to show that they're excited about what they're doing. But by the end of it, I try and bring that excitement out of them. And I think that's what's if you can show that you're enthusiastic about something, I think it's infectious.
I
You
think
know,
that's absolutely right. Yeah.
and yeah, that's what I try and do with those videos, is to show, you know. And I'll be honest, quite often I do not. Every now and again, like the Beholder video. No, not the Beholder video. The Cobbled video I did. I did not have a good time doing that.
Oh, really?
Because everything went wrong.
Oh, no.
Everything went wrong. Painted the background too thick. The blue ended up too cold. Half my paints dried out, and I carried on trying to use them. Just like, oh, Jesus, come on. But, you know, I mentioned that in the video. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's okay. You know, I've been at this for years, and I make so many mistakes. Maybe I'm just terrible.
I
Maybe
definitely
other
don't
people
think it's
just don't
just
make
you.
as many mistakes.
I think, you know, for any up and coming creative style person, you have to be able to not only not take yourself too seriously, but you also have to be able to take constructive criticism. Like, you have to be able to let someone tell you what is wrong with what you're doing, and hopefully they're going to tell you or help you, or at least give you some inspiration on how to correct the issues. But
Absolutely.
you have to be able to take those hits. And I mean, that's just a human being situation. I think in the world in general, we would have fewer problems if people would just not take themselves so seriously and be able to take criticism. Because, again, like you were saying, we all make massive mistakes, and that's how you learn in life. You know, you fail.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
then you learn.
It's
So
always quite telling to me. It's always, for me, it's the difference between somebody who's working creatively, or as an illustrator. I use illustration as an example, but I could say art in general. But people who've been through art school tend to be able to take that a little bit better, because of the way, certainly in the way art's taught in the UK. In all my art education, nobody ever sat down and went, right, this is how you paint. The way you're taught here is you're given a brief, and you're marked on how you interpret that brief with an outcome.
well,
So you're doing it your way, and then your tutor, or like I'm the tutor now, you know, I talk about what works and what doesn't work, and, you know, through that. And, you know, I'll be honest, I've had some, in my art education, I had this one tutor who, we used to have to pin our work to these boards for assessment, and she'd come along. Oh, she used to do my nutting. She'd come along with like a big blooming Sharpie, and she'd go, no, and just put a big cross through it.
No.
Or she'd put a circle. I like this part, and it'd be like, that's an oil painting. That's not coming out. But, you know, I learned a lot from it. But also working in editorial, you know, where the deadlines are so tight. Like, I'll not name names, but a certain art director I work for on a particular magazine is well known for, you know, you send them your rough in before you do the final artwork, and I'll just get an email back or a phone call, and you just say, well, it's shit, isn't it? and I'll say, really? Would you like to elaborate a little bit? Can you tell me what part of it's shit so I can change it?
yeah.
And, you know, you just grow a thick skin, and, you know, I don't mind it. I mean, you know, it's part of life, isn't it? You're not going to please everybody, but if you can please your client, and, you know, like I said, these videos are going quite well. People seem to quite like them, so, you know.
Yeah, they're great.
Keep doing them.
Let's dive right back into a little bit of Dragonlance here. I'm going to go back to your images and let them pass through in the background of our conversation. Do you have like a favorite story for Dragonlance? Like a favorite book, or just a favorite part of a story?
Do you know, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, and I am going to say it because I feel bad that Dragons of Summer Flame does get such a bad rap.
Yeah.
But I do like that book. I don't know why I like that book, but I do. It's got a feel to it. You know, the narrative, you know, it's not super complex. The characters, you know, I kind of liked the sort of weird reflection of Sturm in Steel Brightblade, and you know, Tass being kind of a bit older and starting to realize it was quite interesting. I like that book quite a lot. I think, if I'm being honest, Dragons of Winter Night is probably my favorite one. Just because there's so much that goes on in that book.
Yeah.
And the way it sets up those really big events that happen.
Oh yeah.
and they're done so well. The fact that you just do that in one book kind of blew my mind a little bit. I always felt a little bit bad when they made the shift from the fourth age to the fifth age. I remember I still have it actually. I've got Dragonlance the Fifth Age, the game.
Yeah.
Which is a game in many ways. It's a very flawed game. I would definitely say that. But in many ways, it was quite ahead of its time. I mean, I really liked the magic system in that game. Playing with cards, were they just trying to cash in on the whole Magic the Gathering hype? Hard to say. Magic the Gathering has a lot to answer for in lots of different ways, both good and bad. Particularly towards the end of the 90s, it did a lot of things to the game industry that was a bit weird.
I really enjoyed Saga as a game system because that's when I was diving into different role-playing systems at the time, and that's where I was introduced to Vampire Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse. I can't remember, but that was very story focused. D&D was always hack and slash when I was a kid. Like we'd go in.
It didn't lend itself to role play. It wasn't really. I mean, if I think of second edition, they brought in. Well, they amalgamated proficiencies, but they were all still very related to combat, weren't they?
Yeah.
For the most part. But yeah, the Saga system was really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we would use it like tarot cards almost, where, you just flip it over, you look at the character on, and you're like, okay, what is going on behind that character's in that head? What alignment are they? And you would use that inspiration to craft the outcome of whatever happened. And, to your point about the magic, I thought that was fantastic too, because it relied on the creativity of the player.
Exactly. Yeah. And the whole kind of background of that I thought was really interesting, with the great big dragons from across the sea coming over and all that. I mean, as a concept, I thought it was really, really interesting, but it just, pardon me, in game terms and even in the novels a little bit, it never really panned out because I always felt I did read a couple of the Fifth Age novels when they came out, The Dawning of a New Age and some of the other ones. And I always remember thinking, wow, I feel real sorry for these authors because I really got the impression with those books that they weren't allowed to make big changes.
Yeah.
So I always felt like those dragons were really interesting, but they were undefeatable. They had plot armor thicker than anything, I think.
Until the Lost Souls
came back. That's always what I thought.
Mina just came up and really crushed them
to shake that idea. But yeah,
that's what I really appreciate that too.
I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, the Dragonlance, like the timeline was always really like it. Just there was never like a brief of like a time for the characters to actually breathe. It seemed like it was just constantly massive world event after massive world event, and so as a player, you never knew, or even as a DM, you never knew where in the timeline you're going to be sitting, so that where can they actually grow, or when can they actually? I think that world is flawed in that it doesn't cater to the imagination of a DM. It's so refined and it's so set out and it's so rich. It for me, it makes it very challenging to actually play the world. I enjoy the books more than I enjoy playing the world, simply because, everything seems to be already laid out. And it wasn't until the Age of Mortals where, they finally said, okay, now it's time for you guys to go and do whatever you want as players and stuff. But at that point, I'm like, I want to go back and, before all this other stuff was, and you can, do whatever you want as a player. And it doesn't matter. You're not, confined to the book world that they wrote, but you do fall in love with those characters and you do want to sort of recreate them as your own characters, as your own players and stuff. Yeah. Do you have a moment that was like the most devastating in Dragonlance for you?
Ooh, most devastating. There's a few. Reading it back a second time, Stern's death, as a kid when I read it, didn't really have any impact. But when I read it this time, it did have a bit more of an impact. But devastating. Flint's death, I've talked about that. That's a big deal. Tasselhoff getting squished, that was a biggie. I did not see that coming right at the end of that book.
I know.
I thought, yep, Tass has made it to the end. He's getting through it again. It's all good.
That crushed me.
Raceland's sacrifice surprised me. I kind of, reading it through a second time, I kind of got that it was leading up to it, but I honestly thought he was gonna,
Yeah.
say, "Screw you guys, I'm gonna do this anyway."
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many. I mean, it's not so much the devastating moments that get me with Dragonlance; it's the relationships between the characters I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Um, just they're just a dysfunctional group of people to begin with, aren't they?
For sure.
It's what's so wonderful about it. You've got Caraman who just wants to eat, drink, and be merry. Raceland dragging the life out of the party. I think about them when they meet in the inn at the first, the first time. Sturm is all, stern and bitter. You've got the two plains people, and they're kind of not sure what's going on.
Yeah.
Flint is just grumpy
He's great.
all the time, and anything with Flint and boats just made me hilarious.
Yeah.
Loved it.
If it wasn't
his death, because it's not a heroic death. He has a heart attack, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's an old man. This stuff happens.
I think that's what got me. It's like, they were on the back of the dragon, and they it'd been wonderful, and it's all shown that Tass is having a fantastic time, and then they get to the end, and it's like, oh my god, this isn't a part where somebody dies. This is awful.
Yeah. Yeah, that struck me really hard, him, because again, him and Taz's back and forth are the comedic relief of the entire system. But he's also, that mentor for Tanis specifically, but just that mentor character who, they've lived, I mean, literally hundreds of years at this point, but he's lived a life, and he's at the end, and he's grumpy as hell, which is, sort of curmudgeonly and endearing, but he's also very caring and loving, and even when he's busting Taz's balls, you clearly can see that he loves the guy.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I really love that.
It's rough. And Tanis's death in Summer Flame is unexpected. And I don't know. I was a bit disappointed with his death, actually. I kind of got that he had to die there, but I don't know. It was unexpected. Oh, and what is it? Caraman's son, Palin. Him in the War of Souls, man. He is like night and day compared to how you see him in Summer Flame.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, he's older too. I mean,
he's a lot older. He's a broken individual. I mean, he starts to, some of his behaviors. He starts to become more Raceland-like, doesn't he? Yeah, but that was interesting. I really liked that.
I wonder if that's just the one thing I really loved about Dragonlance is their approach with magic. Is that it has this physical effect on you. A little hard to role play, but still, it infuses you, but it takes something in the process. And I really thought that was a fantastic way of, because I'd never seen that in any other fantasy world ever. And so to see it in this, I like how magic, it's like a drug. You become addicted to it, and it sort of takes over at some point, and you just sort of lose yourself to the desire of power. And, I mean, I really liked that parallel. And, you see that clearly, of course, with Raceland, but to see it with other characters in smaller degrees, it's just like, yeah, that I got to stay away from that magic. It's too much.
Well, I think in lots of ways, that's what made Raceland really quite an interesting character. He delivers these really snarky, sarcastic lines all the time. He's always mildly annoyed by everyone around him, which is always fun. But the fact that he's given up everything for this one thing, this magic that is his life, I thought that was really interesting stuff. And you start to see Palin kind of starting to understand, or really understanding that in War of Souls, that he definitely didn't understand in Dragons and Summer Flame, and that was really interesting to me, that change in his character. But yeah, hopefully we'll see more of that kind of thing in the new trilogy, I hope.
Oh man, I can't wait. I'm gonna be
too. As soon as they announce that, and then the lawsuit happens, and it's like, oh come on, just sort it out.
We just can't catch a break no matter what. I mean, why aren't they doing a live action film? Why isn't there a series? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Come on. You know why they're not doing a live action film. Did you see the animation they made? I think it was in like 2008.
Yep.
Oh, it's ropey as hell.
Yep.
I mean, I worked in the animation industry back then, and that was bad.
Yeah. No, it
Yeah.
really was. But still, the story is as complex as it needs to be for a really engaging, especially nowadays with what they're doing with just series on TV. I mean,
Yeah.
you could really just take it to a streaming service and go crazy. They did the whole Shannara Chronicles.
They did, didn't they? I forgot
Yeah,
about
on like MTV or something, like some weird platform like that. And those are pretty good. And, Game of Thrones, I mean, you could totally do that with Dragonlance, which would be badass. All right, so give a quick shout out to where the good folks online can find you and your work online. Of course, I had mentioned your website, juanillustration.com, but, and of course the YouTube channel, Odd Artworks. Well, is there anywhere else that people can find you?
Yeah, if they look on the Odd Artworks YouTube channel, they'll find Instagram and Facebook and things like that.
Okay.
I can't remember. This is really bad.
Do you have a preferred
I'm an old man.
platform?
I can't remember the name of anything. I think it's all Juan Illustration or Juan Fine Art. I can't remember. I do update them all the time. I just never take any notice about what they're called. I really hate social media, to be honest with you.
I don't actually have any because of that. YouTube.
It's the bane of my life. If I didn't need it for like hustling for work, I would just not bother with it.
It's rough. But to the point of work, do you take commissions and stuff?
Yeah, I'm always open for commissions. I do have quite a bit on at the moment. Nothing very exciting, unfortunately. Just the regular work I do. But if anyone wants anything, just get in touch and we can talk about it and sort something out.
Awesome.
So it's all good.
I want to say thank you so much for your time. You're very generous.
It's Dragonlance.
Yeah.
Come on.
You lose
How
yourself.
often do I get to talk about Dragonlance?
It's funny. I can't wait to see what you're going to do next. And of course, you take suggestions for different creatures for the YouTube videos and stuff, which I think is just fascinating. And every time you put out a new video, I'm there watching it. And I encourage everyone else to do the same. Subscribe to his channel because it's fantastic. I mean,
I did notice that you've suggested a Death Knight, which you're not the first person to suggest that. So that's probably going to be, I don't know if it'll be next. It'll certainly be not too far off. Somebody suggested a gelatinous cube, and I have no idea how the hell I'm going to do it.
That would be interesting.
I mean,
because it's not quite fully opaque.
The reason for doing these is to redesign them, but a gelatinous cube is just a cube of jelly, isn't it?
What if it's coming out of a can? It's like a Spam can, gelatinous Spam.
Acidic jelly coming out of a can. Lovely. Yeah, definitely.
And that's why it's square. It's like starts to break apart of the bin.
Spam, that congealed weird jelly that's on. Oh, that's horrible, that stuff. Oh, nasty.
Good stuff. Well, that's great. Now I have something to look forward to.
There you go. Fantastic. It's going to be racking my brain most of this week.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, and I hope you have a very fantastic future with this whole pandemic finally lifting. It seems, fingers crossed. And
fingers crossed, yes.
Yeah, we can all get back out.
And you too, keep the Dragonlance videos coming. They're really good. I really enjoy them.
Oh, thank you. And I'm that's my plan. Just trying to have a little bit of fun. All right. Well, have a fantastic day, and until we can chat again, Slanjavar.
Yeah, give me a shout. Definitely always down to talk about Dragonlance.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. I'd like to invite you to share your Dragonlance story as a comment below. Subscribe to the channel and like this video. You can support this channel and pick up some Dragonlance gaming materials by using the affiliate link in the description below. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Until next time, Slanjavar.